Hello everybody. In this video, I'm going to talk about audio preferences and setup. First thing you'll need to do is open Preferences. On a Mac, it will be under Live Preferences. On a PC, it'll be under Options, and you'll find Preferences there. Or what I recommend is learning the hotkey. Command comma is Preferences on a Mac, and Control comma is Preferences on a PC, and Escape will get rid of it. And you also come to notice this is a common shortcut key for all software to open up preferences in any software. Now look to the left of preferences and you'll see multiple tabs that you can click on. You want to select the audio tab. And the first thing we need to check is driver type. On a Mac, core audio should be pre-selected and you don't really have any other options. But on a PC, MME DirectX is generally pre-selected and it's not the greatest driver to use. MME DirectX does allow multiple applications to use the audio, but it's not very good for low latency audio. You want to use your ASIO drivers. If you have an audio interface like a Focusrite Mo2 or the KMix, the installation of the device will install the ASIO drivers. But if you do not and you still want to get low latency audio like when you're playing drums or something like that with your push, you'll want to go and download ASIO for All from the internet. You'll probably need to reboot your computer, and then you will see the ASIO driver available under the driver type. The only drawback on a PC is it does not allow multiple application support, so if you're trying to watch a YouTube video and use your ASIO drivers on Ableton, one or the other will probably not work. In that scenario, you might want to switch to the MME DirectX and then switch back to ASIO when you want to play some instruments and things. The next section is the audio input device. On a PC, you only have one of these. On a Mac, you get input and output. On a PC, you just get the audio device. So on a PC, just select whatever audio device you're using. If you're using the ASIO for All, select ASIO for All. If you're using another audio interface like a Mo2 or KMix or something, select whatever interface you're using for your inputs. And then for your output device, select whatever interface you want to use for your outputs. Generally, this will be the same device, but sometimes, like in my scenario, I'm pulling my audio in from the Mo2 and sending it out a little USB device that's connected to my computer that is my primary device. So that way I can capture the audio from Ableton for this video. Now I'll come down to channel configuration. Click Input Config, and depending on your interface, you could see only one option, which is stereo 1 and 2 or mono 1 and 2, or multiple options like on my interface where I have multiple audio inputs. I can simultaneously record multiple channels. This is really handy if you have a bigger studio or for a live performance, if you want to connect a microphone, a guitar, and a synthesizer into your audio interface. One thing to be sure is only enable what you need. This not only helps you reduce screen clutter when we're trying to find our audio, but it also saves CPU. The more of these you have enabled, the more allocations that the CPU makes. So you'll get better performance with only enabling what you need. And on my interface, I have an ADAT connection. I don't have anything connected to ADAT, so I have them all disabled. And then I have all of my analog channels disabled because I actually use them all on occasion. You have the same options for your output config. On this particular device, I only have stereo left and right. But on other devices, say my Mo2, if it were hooked up, I would have a lot more channels. This is really good for if you want a headphone mix that's separate from your main outs. You will need an audio interface that has at least 4 outputs. Or if you want to send track separations to the front of the house in a live scenario, which is really good. So the front of the house engineer can make you sound really good. So if you're running your vocals through live, I highly recommend sending a direct feed out on a separate channel to the front of the house so the front of the house can mix your vocals. Same with guitar or bass or anything like that. The more you can give the front of the house engineer, the better you'll sound because you can't mix yourself on stage. But in some scenarios, you are going to just run out the left and right, like in smaller venues when you don't have a sound engineer, or if the sound engineer is obviously really bad. Now for the in-out sample rate. Sample rate is the number of samples of audio carried per second measured in hertz or kilohertz. Basically, the lower the quality of the sample rate, the lower the quality of the audio. Basically, 44100 is CD quality, 4800 is DVD quality. Because I'm using a small USB device, I don't get more than 4800. But higher sample rates are available, like if I were to switch over to my Mo2. Generally, you want to at least record at the highest sample rate you're going to use. If you're going to release it on DVDs, you want it to be at least 48,000 hertz. But if you're going to release on CDs, 44,100 is fine. Using larger sample rates will increase the quality of your audio, but eventually you're going to have to downsample it down to either DVD or CD quality. And also, the higher sample rates take up more hard drive space. So if you're doing a lot of recording with a lot of high-end gear in a really nice studio, I'd consider using a higher-end sample rate. But for general laptop musicians, just go with DVD or CD quality. It's going to save you a lot of hard drive. I actually would normally do DVD quality, but for some live streaming applications, I've had issues using 48,000. So I have mine set to 44,100. For more information on sample rate, go ahead and do a quick Google search and you'll find a well of information as well as a lot of debates. Now for the buffer size. The buffer size is what's going to determine your latency, like when you're trying to record a live instrument or use a MIDI controller to play a virtual instrument. On a PC, you will not be able to edit your buffer size directly from the preferences window. You will find hardware setup right under input config. Click on hardware setup and it'll open up another window where you can set your buffer size. The lower the number, the less latency you'll have, but your CPU will work harder. The higher the number, the more latency you'll have, but your CPU won't work as hard. But for larger sets where you're not doing any actual live recording, you might find that you need to bump up your buffer size. And when you're actually tracking, you want to bring it down. But generally these days, we don't have to mess with it. You can set it at 128 samples on most modern computers and not have to ever change it. Except in the case of beatboxers and drummers, you're really going to need to get it down to 64 samples. So if you do any live performing as a beatboxer, set it at 64 samples and work your set into the confines of your CPU restrictions, because otherwise you're going to have latency that's just not good enough for beatboxing. For other musicians like synth players and bass players and things like that, it's generally not a problem at 128. But the lower, the better. And now let me talk about the test tone. The test tone will do two things. One, it will help you set your buffer size because you can simulate your CPU, turn on the test tone, adjust the tone frequency, and listen for any clicks and pops. If you hear clicks and pops and dropouts, you might want to raise your buffer size. If you don't, you can try lowering it. One thing to note though, you hear that graininess in the volume? That's normal. That's because it's moving in 1 dB increments, so the resolution of the tone volume isn't going to be very good. Moving the frequency has much better resolution. The other thing the test tone is great for is troubleshooting. And this is a very powerful tip because sometimes you get on stage and nothing works. Or even in the studio, you'll hook up your computer and nothing works. So the first thing you want to do is figure out where the problem is coming from, and the test tone will help you do that. If you open up Ableton and you don't hear any sound from your live set, if you go to preferences, turn on test tone, and you hear a test tone, you'll know that the problem is somewhere within your live set. You might have a filter turned up or a track muted or something like that. But if you don't hear a test tone, the problem is probably somewhere outside of live. I would check to make sure I'm plugged into the right ports. I would check to make sure that my volume is turned up and that everything is set up correctly. There could also be some weird software application going, or you might have just forgot to set your audio output device correctly. And if all else fails, when it's very, very weird and nothing's working and you just can't put your finger on it, make sure to reboot. In fact, if you can't figure out the issue within a minute or two, reboot and then try again. And now for driver error compensation. Generally, most of the time you might not have to mess with this, and I'm not really going to get too into it, but it has to do with the latency of your audio interface when you're playing live instruments. If you're not playing live instruments, you don't even really need to worry about the driver error compensation. But if you want to check it out, I highly recommend clicking on Help, going into Help View, and then you can click on Ableton Lessons, scroll down, Hardware Setup, Driver Error Compensation. This will give you a lot more information about driver error compensation and has a tutorial plus live set that will help you set it up. I also highly recommend running the built-in tutorials if you're a live user, especially Live Basics. Live Basics is a great place to start. And then also, if you want to do some reviewing, you can do hardware setups, MIDI setups, and then some of the advanced stuff. Now, there's one other option I want to talk about. It's not on the audio tab. It's actually under the record warp launch, and that is bit depth. Bit depth is the number of bits in each sample, and it directly relates to the resolution of the sample. Basically, you have usually 3 options: 16, 24, and 32. Not all interfaces do 32, not all do 24. 16-bit is CD quality. DVDs and other formats can do 24-bit, and of course computers can do like 32-bit. And really what this means is it's kind of like a pixelated image. The smaller the bit depth, the less the quality of the image. The same with the audio. But 16, it's going to be fine. 24, much better, and you can get away with a lot more. 32, if you have it, you might as well set it. But it does increase your file sizes, much like the sample rate. But generally, I leave mine at 32-bit. In the end of the process, you're going to downsample to whatever format that you're going to release on, and that's part of the mastering phase. But you should still record at a higher quality format if available. Thank you for watching. My name is Jimmy Allison. I'm an Ableton Live certified trainer, and I teach one-on-one online lessons, which means we can really focus on your needs and what you're trying to do and work a curriculum around exactly what you do. Feel free to check out my website, austinabletontutor.com, or contact me for more information. Also, check out my more videos. I'm going to be releasing a bunch, and there's going to be a lot of information on my YouTube channel. Thanks. Bye.